Namaste, this is Dakota, and this video will be teaching you how to go into the splits. So it'll be a daily video, so just jump right into it every day, every time you feel like watching the video, whenever you need to. So splits are more of an intermediate yoga pose, so we'll get right into our yoga mat and a Paschimottanasana. So a forward seated bend, inhaling, lifting all the way up, keeping the spine nice and long, the feet are flexed, and keeping the legs nice and long too, and just fold right over, keeping the heart forward, relax through the shoulders and the head, and just notice what feels tight here around the hamstrings, the glutes, the quads, the thighs. And just relax into this for a couple moments. So the splits can be rather challenging if you have tight hamstrings, tight quads, or maybe you have different bone structure. You might have always just said that your hips just can't do that. Maybe this is true. Maybe the hips are particularly tight, so we'll work into it. Take about 3 more breaths here, and each breath just let your body fold naturally more into the stretch, a little bit deeper, releasing the hamstrings, the glutes, the top of the back. Exhale, rising all the way back up and switching the legs over to one side, keeping the legs out long and coming into a wide leg. Not into a straddle yet, just a wide leg, as far as your legs will go. And we'll just stay active with this posture. Take a deep breath and exhale, bending over to one side. And then exhale the other side. And the next inhale, walking the hands out forward, pressing the glutes, pressing the tailbone down into the mat. And work with keeping the feet flexed, the knees are straight. So flex the feet a little bit more, stretching through the hamstrings if you need to. That's what's super tight. Just breathe into it and relax. Exhale, walking the hands back up. Bring the feet together and shift over to a tabletop. Just for a breath. And tuck the toes and the hips up towards the air. Downward facing dog. And we'll stretch the legs, the hamstrings here. Choosing to walk the dog, so just pedaling around the feet. Bending and straightening one leg at a time. And sending one leg up towards the air, nice and straight. And notice how the hips are. Did the hip turn out to the side? And if so, just turn it, rotate it back towards the front of the mat. Then send that right leg in towards the front of the body. And plant that right foot down in between the hands. Now you're coming into a high lunge here, but stay here for a moment. Feel around the hips. And then shift down into a low lunge. Send that left foot back a little bit more. You may start to feel the hamstrings, the quads, the glutes. They may want to start tightening up around the left side of the body. And just breathe into it and let go. The next inhale, lift the chest, lift the head. Keep that left leg down and long. See how I'm pressing more into the top of the knee than the back. So the leg is out a little bit longer. And just do what you can if you're still getting into your splits. More beginner, it's okay. Start to lift up a little bit more as you press that left hip forward. Keep the belly pulled in. Now you're starting to notice if you need to stretch the hips more, or maybe less. And exhale, coming all the way back down. Send the right knee and foot out a little bit. Just walk it out. So now the inside of the hands, or the hands are on the inside, and the foot is out more. Coming into a lizard pose. You can walk that foot out even a little bit more. Just see what your range is for your hips. So now you're getting deeper into the hips. Breathe into it. Maybe start to come down onto the forearms with that leg still out. And so you're really working with opening that left hip. One more breath. And exhale, starting to come back up with the hands. Bring that foot back to center. And you're back into your low lunge position. Start to shift the hips, the right hip towards the back, straightening that front leg. Now you're working through the calves, the quads, the hamstrings. We just worked through the hips. This is all what we incorporate into our splits. So it's beneficial to stretch all of it. A little bit every day helps and goes a long way. And so you may be all the way back here and you're still working the same muscles, still stretching the same groups. But if you are back here, try to point your toes forward. See how it makes a difference. Try to lengthen your spine a little bit more. Notice how it's working that inner, the outside of the thigh, the quads, the hamstrings, that knee area, that little muscle and joints. Maybe you get the toes all the way down. And then start to bend the knee, come back into that low lunge, although you're tucking the left foot, and draw it back up to standing, and just hang in a forward fold. Dangle around for a little bit. And send the legs out to the sides, opening up and turning the toes out to face the sides, squatting down into a malasana, a yogic squat. Send the elbows, triceps into the knees. And everyone's squat's going to look different. You may be all the way up here. And if that's the case, then come all the way down first. Maybe the legs come in a bit more. Maybe you're right here. And just work with opening those hips. And the spine is long. And just breathe here. And then from this one, place your hands, root them down into the mat, and take that right leg all the way out. Maybe step that foot out a bit more and coming into a skandasana, a side lunge. And just feeling it open all throughout the muscles of the legs. And one more breath. Placing the hands down, coming back into a wide leg stance, that fold, and then shifting over to the other side. And pressing into the knee. And just notice what leg feels more comfortable with these postures, one leg doesn't. And the next exhale, you're gonna shift over to the opposite side, or shift back into a wide leg stance first. And then we'll shift over to the side that we didn't do, the left side. So the left foot comes over, framing the hands over the leg, and the knee in alignment, and just lowering that right leg down. That right knee comes all the way down. Sending it back a bit more and opening through the right hip this time. Now you're noticing how the right hip feels. Maybe engage the core, but you're still pressing down through that right hip. You can come up. One more breath. And then come back down to that low lunge. And then send the left leg out a bit into the lizard pose. And you already know what to do now, coming down to the forearms. Just notice how this side's different. And so that hip is pressing down into the mat. Okay, if it's all the way up, but just rotate it forward and down. And take 3 more deep breaths in this posture. And you're gonna see the more you do these poses every day or this video, the better your flexibility, the better your splits, the easier it's gonna get. Exhale, starting to walk the hands back up, and then shift back into that low lunge, just for a breath. Lift the chest, lift the head, then shift the left hip back, straightening the left leg. Keeping the spine nice and tall, nice and straight. And again, if you're all the way back here, if the foot's lifted, try to shift forward or just point the toes. And then maybe see if the toes can come all the way down. And notice how it feels around the knee, the hamstring muscles. It may feel like it works against you. It may feel like it's impossible, but you'll get there through practice. And you can just work with a little bit of movement if it's not possible to stay still. You can work with that flexing and pointing motion. Maybe rocking back and lowering down. That's always good. And coming up a bit. You can just add a little bit of freedom through your practice today, through your stretches. Next inhale, rock that foot back. Just give a little shake of the hips. Find some enjoyment today. And then we'll go right into more intense straddle, and then we'll come into our splits. So grab any yoga blocks, pillows, anything that you need, placing them underneath the legs. I'll see how far out your legs can come now. And coming up all the way. And take a fold over towards the left side. Inhale, take a fold over towards the right side. Maybe send the legs out even farther. Even farther. And pressing those hips down. So you're not rooting the hips, but rather just imagining. Maybe it's just a visualization. So instead of being on the sit bones and the hips facing the sky, that pelvic floor, those hips rotate down. So you see the little rotation. You can keep that movement going too. Just be mindful of the hip space. If your hips are delicate or you're not used to this kind of intense stretching, then don't take it farther than you need to. You might wake up and feel it the next day if you don't stretch too often. So just keep rotating, or maybe if you want to stay rotated and come all the way down. So now your hips are facing the ground, your pelvic floor is facing the ground, and then you're folding down. And maybe you can work with the toes here too. Pointing, flexing. And coming all the way back up. Bringing the legs together. Now we'll come right into our splits. Our splits is monkey pose, Hanumanasana. So we'll start with a block or pillow first. Come right into that low lunge. Placing the block underneath the hip. We'll start with whatever side feels most comfortable to you. Whatever hip and hamstring is good. So you can have a block or pillow underneath that hip, but you can also have a block facing this way. Pretend it's a block. And you'll be leaning into it. And just slowly, as you scoot that back leg further down, further into the block or pillow, you're straightening that front leg. Eventually, you'll sink right into it. It's gonna take time. Maybe you need to double up on the props. And then slowly after practice, you start to release the props, taking one block away at a time. Thank you for joining me. Make sure to do the other side of the splits. Do any other posture that you need to. And maybe to rest, take a reclined pigeon, happy baby. Thank you for joining me. And I hope your splits progresses. And keep practicing. Thank you.